Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Joshua Yoder Show. I'm Joshua Yoder, and today I want to talk about this episode about self-reflecting and like learning from the past and how to try to turn it into a better future. And today I brought in a guest that knows a lot what I'm about to want to talk about today, and he knows a lot about me. In fact, he even looks like me. He is my identical twin, Chadman. What's up, my twin?
Hello, my twin. Thank you for having me on here.
Well, thank you again for doing this. Like, I know this might be a little emotional for both of us because you know, like I said, I want to do a little bit of self-reflection and try to, maybe do things that like not only help build us up, but also others around us that are going through similar circumstances.
Yes, as well. It's been like the end of July here, which was June was Mental Health Awareness Month, but I guess any time is perfect time to talk about this stuff.
Well, we should all just be in this together, like every day we should learn to love each other. We shouldn't have to wait till like certain months or days or whatever.
Well, that's true, but
Life stops for no one, as they say.
yep, it has been like that for years and for centuries.
Indeed. But with that being said, I want to talk about the topic we get to. And, well, if anyone's read my blogs or anyone that hasn't known us or has now finally gotten to hear from us, me and my twin brother here were born with scoliosis and cerebral palsy. And that has led to some physical challenges, but a lot of mental challenges as well. And it's been something that's been kind of an up and down thing for us for our whole lives since we're now officially 35 years old, which crazy to think, huh, my twin?
Yes, I know. Like some people are actually surprised by that because they actually think I'm younger than what I actually am.
Yes, the looks on many faces when we tell them our age.
Perfect example is don't do drugs.
Well, yeah, well, definitely that, but also just, thank God, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But let's get right to it. And like I said, this could get a little emotional, just fair warning to everybody. But, you know, for many people that do not know, cerebral palsy and scoliosis is actually, a common thing that happens, among twins, which I just so happen to have one.
Yes, that's it. It's also like it's 50-50 chance from what I've heard from the research I did and some of the doctors I've talked to. It's like for twin siblings, it's 50-50 chance that something like this could happen. And unfortunately for us, we were on that side of the board.
Well, and also too, like it also should be noted that from what I researched and read as well, it says the only way it could have happened was during the pregnancy and or during the delivery, which, it, like you said, it was a 50-50 shot and we just so happened to get there. But what many people may not know was that we didn't really realize our issues for some time, actually. It wasn't until like we were around 8 years old when, you
8 to 10
know,
years old.
8, 10 years old, somewhere around that. But people, we like I said, we just kind of grew up like as a kid, and things were happening, and and then we soon discovered that we had these issues, and and even then we still weren't really sure what was going on.
Well, from what I was told when we were growing up, because I remember talking about this with our mom about it with some doctors, is that like went up there, and I think it was you that was first. It was like we hadn't got like something happened to you, and you had to get tested or something, and then that's when we first heard about it. And then when they found out that there was a twin, they had me tested as well, and they found out that because it's rare for like for a set of twins to have only one of them have issues and the other one not.
Yeah, and indeed, and just but then talking about it a little bit more, there was a lot of issues being happening that we still didn't fully understand, and to be fair, our parents weren't really told how to handle this or how do we go about it, so we kind of were left to our own devices, to put it nicely. But you know, but then as time went on, we kind of noticed things, but again, nothing was ever really talked about until we got much older.
Yeah, like because I remember like people would say things like because like with what you said too, like our parents didn't really know much what to do. Like when they first heard about these situations, most of the time they were just offering like here's some pills that could probably help. Well, which was a problem there because around that time, because again we were born in the '90s, and a lot of kids were getting sick like from taking medication like that. So it was kind of like a not a good solution. But the thing is though too is like it wasn't just the pills thing problem, is that no one really told our parents like how could this affect us, what would this happen to us as we got older. Like they didn't really have a clear answer to what was asked of them.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like we were really young, you know, like we didn't really ask questions. I mean, well, like I said, we're going to be self-reflecting here about this soon, but like looking back, there's like, wow, this couldn't have been any more obvious. But it wasn't until, you know, we were getting ready for our senior year of high school, you know, we were getting ready to get our license, you know how it is, you know,
Yeah.
teenagers, we want to go out and travel, like, yeah, like we can go do whatever, you know, that all that stuff. But, you know, we walked into the doctors and, well, we told them we were going for a drive and like, or excuse me, get our driver's license. And well, they looked us right in the face and were like, we don't know if it's a good idea for me and you to be driving.
Well, yeah, like because I think from what the doctor had kind of said to us is like because we also deal with like things like ADHD because it's like with that anxiety, but she said like with some people with cerebral palsy, it's kind of like even it doesn't matter like how bad it like depends on like I don't think it even depends on what type of level of cerebral palsy you have. It's like even it's mild, like you have a hard time with driving or like having fun trouble focusing on like long road trips and stuff like that, and you have to like be extra careful with your surroundings when you're driving.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that because that's when I finally worked up. Now that we're older, or you know, I finally worked up the courage, you know, research into it. You know, and that's one of the things I looked up was like, okay, what's this in driving? And honestly, I can't really be mad at the doctors for saying what they said. You know, like I totally get why they said what they said. And honestly, I've had moments when I'm driving where I get really, really nervous.
No, I'm the same way. Like, I mean, like the furthest I ever drove would had to be like from where we live. If it's like would probably be State College. Like that was probably the furthest I've ever really driven. I mean, I don't know if Altoona is further, but that was like the like if I can just remember right off the top of my head, that's the furthest I've ever drove.
Well, yeah, and also, but there's been moments where I've worked where I'm like, man, I just want to go home, and then I get nervous, like driving, and then I'm like, and like I said, like I never really noticed this until we started like actually researching things. Like, you know, people don't realize like, and I think that's one of the things too. And I want to get to like the self, reflection part about a lot of that stuff because one of the things I will say that has been frustrating for me, especially growing up, like when people look at us at first glance, they're like, "There's, what do you mean? There's something wrong? You guys look fine to me." But then, the more they get to see us, they're kind of like, "Oh, like that was probably one of the frustrating parts of growing up with this, like because you're trying to figure it out, and then you got people saying that, and then like when they get to know you more, you're like, oh, oh, you guys are, oh yeah, this is a problem."
Well, it's hard, especially with like when you're dealing with like kids your own age. Like when you're young at the time, like they don't know you that well, and they always like to pick on you because you have like these issues, and they don't understand it. That's what makes it a little bit harder. And I mean, it's hard enough to be social when in these kind of situations, which I know for a fact we've been working on that. But I think with like as you get older and people start know, like you said, like when people start getting to know us more, they're like, "Oh wow, I actually had no idea. Like there was something like this going on." Because again, you have to understand too, like that doesn't mean that they're bad people. They just have their own lives and problems they have to deal with, so they don't fully understand what like other people's situations are.
Well, and to add on to that too, like I remember like little things too, like the people say, "Why do you guys waddle like a penguin?" Well, I was like, "Well, I don't know. It's just that's just how I walk." I like we didn't even know. So for anyone else to like understand what we were going through, we didn't understand what we were going through at the time. So can't really be mad at anybody, even though yeah, it was certainly frustrating.
Well, yeah, like it always has been frustrating, but I think it's like like it makes it a little bit harder sometimes, like for us to process things too, because that was like one of the things that I've kind of noticed, like throughout self-reflecting, is like when you're dealing with stuff, uh, like you need a time for a moment, like sometimes you need time by yourself just to let your brain process things. It's like, it's like, because lots of times, like I remember back when I was in school, well, like I still tried my best to get good grades. Like, I mean, I know you did too, but it's like your mind is having a hard time catching up on things. So it makes it harder for you to learn something thing as opposed to what like other kids are doing like at that moment in time.
Oh no, I definitely know what you're talking about, because one of the things, and again, like I never noticed it until like more recently, but like when I was in school, I would constantly have to repeat things like in school, like I have to ask questions and then I have to ask it again and again, and I'm like, man, I'm having a miserable time like trying to figure this out. And then, I'll give you a perfect example. Since I've been 17 years old, I've been trying to assist, keyword being try, to assist with dad to like help rotate like my tires or like understand like oil changes and all that stuff, like trying to work on my car basically, right? And well, I'm listening, I'm focusing my eyes directly on him as he's trying to tell me things. And the worst feeling in the world is that you are trying to listen, but you know for a fact that nothing is registering. And I think that's been like my pet peeve, that's still irritates me to this day, that it's something that like, oh wow, like come on, like just, you've done this how long now, like come on, like focus, like I get really mad at myself, like because I'm like, you got to focus, he's trying to tell you what to do. And I'm like, and I've been seeing it like other cases too, like trying to do like a simple little job and people would be like, hey Josh, can you do A, B, and C? And I'm like, yeah, sure, yeah, no problem. And then I go do it and then they're like, hey, why didn't you do this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I did. And he's like, you didn't do this. And I'm like, I didn't, but you told me to do this and that. And I said, yeah, but I also wanted you to do that. And you're like, oh man, I'm really sorry, like it's just frustrating. And like the worst part is like, it's happening too, like that's what's kind of frustrating.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, and that's like with ADHD, it's like your mind is like already running with millions of ideas at once. Sometimes and it's like you could remember a whole list of things. Like you and I know how to like do things like rotate the tires. It's just there's other things too. Like there's no way I could remember like changing the oil because there's so many other factors that I keep forgetting about. With rotating the tires, there's is easier than changing the oil because the only downside is because of our CP, it's hard to keep our grip on things and like moving the tires in the right place, especially if we're doing like a very heavy vehicle.
Well, I'll also point out, we should point out too, like about our cerebral palsy scoliosis. Like the reason why is we got it was during our birth and deliveries, like lack of oxygen coming into our brain.
Yeah, I didn't remember much of that part, but
yeah, but that's what I mean. Like when I was researching, it says due to lack of oxygen in the brain, that's how this happened. And like, and you mentioned about that too. Like especially now that we're getting older, we're kind of noticing like how much more difficult like physical labor is kind of getting to us. Like, I mean, this happened years ago, but like I remember, and again, we tried not to be like too negative about it, but like at the time we were like, we both could tell we were really mad. Like we were out shoveling snow and it just, we were shoveling, we were trying to help out the best we can, clean up the driveway, no big deal. But then we both started having like a miserable time, trying to shovel snow. And I'm like thinking, man, like, why is it so hard to lift up this snow? And probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life was like, asking our dad for help because we were like, he's twice our age. And we're like, hey, do you think you can help us shovel snow? And I'll just never forget, like sitting in the, in the living room, just, getting some clothes off, so we can get warm, cause it is cold out, and
yeah.
we're just like looking at each other. Like we're not saying a word, but we're just like looking at each other like this is embarrassing.
Yeah, like it's embarrassing, but at the same time though too, it's like because I mean, yeah, I have like some issues with that but then not long after we felt much better, and then it wasn't that much harder for us to shovel snow. I think the problem was though too was like like especially for me, was I went and decided to shovel a huge chunk of snow in one lift of shovel, and I think that didn't actually help because I remember like as soon as I lifted it up, my lower spine felt like it had some spike thing shoved into it, and I think that was one of the things about scoliosis is that your spine's a little crooked. It it doesn't matter because it goes into the nerves, and I think that maybe if I hadn't put so much weight on there, maybe it wouldn't have hurt my back or something like that as opposed to. So I kind of calmed myself down then afterwards when I realized that.
Well, yeah, but that my point being though, my twin, is that we, as the older we get, the more we're starting to notice, like, man, doing some of this stuff's like getting more and more difficult to do, and it's like it's a little embarrassing because like now that we're, most people look at us, they're like, wait, you're 35, and like you're still young, and I'm like, yeah, and that's kind of the point why I'm like depressed and like struggling mentally because I'm just like, yeah, I'm 35. You would think I'd be more like a peak physically thing, but instead I feel like I'm as old as our parents.
Yeah, sometimes we're a little better than, but I think it's just like just trying to stay in on a more positive note here. Is like we have done some good things here, like physically. I think it's just also again like the mental game is also a factor because there are times where I felt like we were taken advantage of. Like we were kind of we were told things, but then they would be mad at us because we didn't do this. But in reality, they just didn't want to do it. So I kind of felt like we were like taken advantage of in physical aspect of things.
Oh, we definitely have been taken advantage of by people in our lifetime. There's no question about that. Even though, like you said, I want to, try to be more positive. Like I said, self-reflection. And one of the self-reflection things too, I kind of wanted to bring up was like there was a lot of times where I felt like, man, like, do mom and dad like love me? Like, am I doing something wrong? Am I like am I like a disappointment to them? And again, not knowing at the time, they were upset by it too because they didn't know what to do, and I didn't know that at that time. And then finally, like as I got older, and thank God for Nan and Pap, especially Nan. She was the one who really like told us like believe it or not, your parents do love you. And then like when I finally like had the courage to like talk to them, and especially mom, like I realized like, oh wow, like I didn't know that. It was just the truth of the matter is, and we mentioned before, is they had no idea how to handle it. So it's like not only does it affect us, it affects our loved ones around us, and it's like it's important to know that they do care. They just don't know what to do, and you just got to somehow come together and figure it out.
Well, yeah, like it's kind of like what I said earlier because I remember like mom had told me about that. Is like, yeah, they offered like pills or something, but then like they both had asked them like, well, what else could we do? Like besides that, like was there a specialist we could see? Like was there like, and they never got an answer for that. And I think that was part of the issue, especially with mom, because obviously she kind of like puts most of the blame on herself when it really wasn't her fault. Because again, like she didn't even know she was going to have twins until later on.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's not. Stop it. but it's like they didn't know what else to do, and they had asked before, like even like, I mean, I don't think you were there, but I think I remember like when I had a yearly checkup there, like after we were asked to get our driver's license, mom had asked like, well, had been there any like physical therapy, or like was there anybody there that like a specialist we could have gone to at least talk to like get like a better understanding. And till recent years, they never really got an answer.
Well, yeah, and that was part of the the depression and like frustration because one of the things that has caused us depression and stuff that we still talk about to this day is that okay, how can we do something to like at least show we can like at least live on our own, you know what I mean? Like we can be able to like do things financially because like I said, physically our bodies are kind of like not necessarily in the best shape, even though we do try to do things to like help fix that. But like I said, we fell so far behind the eight ball, it's not even funny. And and I think that kind of gets us a little frustrated. And again, this is not a knock. It's it's just how it is. But coming from a small town where not a lot of stuff could be there to help. You know what I mean? So it definitely can get frustrating. But I think again, with like a lot of self-reflection and, prayer, and just like you and me talking, we're realizing like, oh, it happens, but maybe there's a reason for it, and maybe this is all a part of something.
Well, yeah, like, and I think also too, like when it comes to like mental health or like physical like disability, is that like that you can do some things, but you're not going to be able to do something that can sustain you. Like because some people say like you can live on your own, own, and a lot of stuff even with these conditions. You just need to have the right kind of support system in there, and I think that was actually something too. Like to be fair, like even in small towns, like even in big cities, like mental health stuff or like physical stuff, that wasn't something like, especially in the 90s, wasn't talked about enough. Like just this stuff now, like we have just heard recently of stuff like mental health stigma and all that stuff. Like we've heard this more like in the recent years than we had for most of our lives. So like that to me, I think is one of the things I think is changing.
And actually also too, to be fair, like if you go actually look back in the even early days, like in the 40s and 50s, like that stuff was there. They just, used different wordage. You know what I mean? Like that's the another thing people don't seem to want to talk about too when it comes to like mental health and all that stuff. A lot of this stuff actually has been talked in the past, but it's just for some reason people try to change it up and call it something different where they make it sound like, well, it's not as bad as you think, but in reality it might be, and some people just may not want to, do anything about it.
Well, yeah, but I think it kind of reminds me of this one guy. Man, I can't remember his name, but he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. He did like a very popular YouTube video song. Like he was like a country singer, I think. And he talked about how about he thought he knew about mental health, and he thought it all was just like, oh, he just needed a time to calm down. But then when he got into it and researched it, he's like, holy crap, this was way bigger than I thought it was.
Are you talking about Tyler Childers?
I'm not 100% sure. I think he did that popular like acoustics country song about working hard or something like that. Like
Keep your nose on the grindstone.
maybe I'm not 100% sure. It's been a while since.
That's Tyler, yeah. Well, no, yeah, and it just I think that's kind of the key thing, frustrating too, because like I said, we were so far behind the eight ball. It's not even funny, and I think here we are still trying, to this day to like find ways to like help take care of ourselves, but I think also too what hurts us, like talking about like mentally is like it's kind of embarrassing too, because you're trying to make it out in the world, and you're like, hey, like people are like, hey, you want to help out or like hang out? And we're like, sure. And they want you to like do something, and you're sitting there like, yeah, I can, even though in your head you can't. And it's like you don't want to, you know what I mean? You don't want to be like, oh, looked at as a weirdo or anything like that. And that's been, a lot of my issues as well. And I know it is for you too, my twin.
But yeah, it is. But I think it's like also too was like a lot of times, like I think it's exposed a lot of things that like because we've had friends that we've known since we were kids. Like some of them actually been coming over with regrets. Like, man, I wish I would have been more willing to like talk to you guys and hang out with you more, because I felt like that could have been more helpful to you, because they're learning about some of this stuff too, more than anything. And that kind of makes them wish that they could like, make some changes to things and try to do things differently. But the truth is, like most times, like you live and learn, and you're never going to know everything right off the bat.
Well, I don't think we're meant to either, too, my twin. But to go back to like what you were saying about like people not knowing, it's like, again, we didn't know either. So we're all trying to grow and do this together. But it's kind of embarrassing too, because it's like you're like, man, I don't know how to say it other than you don't want like sound like you want like special privileges or anything like that. But it's just kind of like, hey, yeah, like this, this and that, and then honestly, it led to a lot of my history of like self harming, which, was pretty dark times. And I mean, there was other contributing factors to that as well. Like we mentioned earlier, we've been taken advantage of by some people, and and it took me a long time to like come to Jesus, to some of that stuff, and again, it's helped me out to do a lot of self reflecting things to where I'm here today, and doing this podcast.
Yeah, I know. It's like I've always had like I think that's another thing too, because we're not just talking about cerebral palsy, because like ADHD and like other mental things too, like people need to understand is is that it is the reality of it is a roller coaster. You're always going to be up and down, and many different things. Because we've known other people who deal with it, and they say like, I'm not going to mention names, but it's like they've done like some things like a summer job program where they could work at a job, but every now and then like their minds will just go burned out and they wouldn't want to work anymore. Like it's not that they're being lazy, and because there's a difference between being lazy and burnout is that with someone who deals with like mental issues or physical health, like it's like there's a time limit, and then sometimes it may take a while for them to fully recover just to get back to how they were before that burnout happened.
Well, yeah, no, we could use ourselves as an example for that. Like for me, like there's like a time where I'm like I don't know, just say like a whole month. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing great. I'm like on fire. Like I can do anything. Like like I'm like really like working hard and thinking like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. It's gonna be better. And then like for the next 3-4 months, I'm like just groggy and you just feel like, man, like what did I do wrong? Did I like, you know what I mean? Like just mentally and like physically, I'm just burnt out. And I never really understood why that happens. But now that I'm getting older, I'm like kind of looking into more into it, which I still am trying to figure that out. But it's like, again, it's kind of embarrassing because you're like, because like what we said before, like people that never met us, they see this or hear this, they're like, why? Like how? And then like they see us in action, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I actually use two examples, one of myself and then one because again, I'm not, because this person's dealing with it as well, but they're younger than us, and I'm not going to put them on a public area. But like I remember when I had my first anxiety blackout when I was working with then this family knew me for years before it happened, and I'm very thankful that they were kind of aware of my situation more because they have a kid who deals with it as well, which I'm not going to get into because it's not my story to tell. Well, is that like I work at dishes sometimes, and I'm only there like part time. The kitchen and the dishwashing room are literally one room. It is a very small, cramped room, and I was I was already having a hard time sleeping the night of when I was trying to go to work, and I ended up like I felt like I was being rushed. I had all these different dishes. I couldn't slow down, and I remember and the last thing I remember was seeing Amanda, my one of the co-owners of the restaurant, look at me, and I couldn't respond. I don't even remember what she said, and I remember holding plates, and that was it. Now everything else I'm about to say was from the people that were around me. The waitress there, like she says, like I try to move forward. She puts her hand on my chest, says, "No, don't move. Give me the plates." She grabbed the plates, she put in there, and like I was burned out. They had me like sit down in the cold, like put some cold ice on the back of my neck because they felt like that's where like a lot of the nerves were, and I was drinking like a ton of water, or, and I remember like they did not want me to drive. Like I remember driving there, but they didn't want me to drive because they felt like mentally where I was, it was not safe for me to drive. Like I felt like I could. I mean, yeah, my mind was still feeling a little dizzy, but they didn't want me to do it. So she drives me up, and you probably remember more because I don't know the whole story. Because I remember going back home, and like I remember going in there, and I remember like heading up to bed and telling you guys what happened, well, what I could remember. And then I remember I felt like I was in bed for an hour. I don't know if I was asleep, but they had to come and get one of you because my car was still there and I couldn't drive it.
No, I know exactly what you mean, and like I've had similar situations too, where like like it's happened to me multiple times. Not that I'm happy with any time it happens, but I've had moments where I'm frustrated about something, and then the next thing I'm on the floor, like and then like people are surrounding me, and I'm like, what happened? Why is everybody just on me? Like, what's going on? And they're like, you don't remember? Like you fell. I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm talking to you guys right now. And he's like, dude, you are literally on the concrete. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I honestly don't even remember. And another thing too, when what people don't realize, when you have a panic attack, it is absolutely draining. Like, you may not always respond right away, or like you think you're responding, but you sound more like you're like blah 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 blah, blah. Like, kind of like you're out of your mind kind of thing.
Like, yeah, like in a cartoon where you get hit in the head with a brick and you're like, bleh.
Something like that. But in your head you think, oh, I'm talking normally, and they're like, dude, you are not talking normally. Like, stop trying to talk, because you're not talking right now. You're not all there. And that's how, like I said, that's happened to me multiple times. And probably the worst example of that was that I ended up in the ER one time, and that was the
I
first time.
remember it.
Yeah, so that was the first time. You know, Mom actually saw that, and she come. That's probably one of the most embarrassing moments, of my life. Was, she coming in the ER and was like, she just saw me laying there, and she's like, dude, why? Like, what happened? And I'm a lot of this stuff, like I said, it's, let's say I've been hurt in the past, taken advantage of in the past, blah blah blah, and it I hold it in, and it, eventually it comes out and bites me in the end. And
Yeah, yeah, no, because I remember that, because I remember, but like in a way there was like, I mean, yeah, like, I mean, I know you felt embarrassed, but like in a way you also had like some moments too, because I remember like coming home and like when you were feeling better, Dad would like, I remember he would hug, like I remember he hugged us like and wished us like, good night, because it was like, he was happy that we were both okay, and like, he was worried. Like normally that was, you've never seen, like we've never seen her dad like that before or in a while, but it's like it was like the first time you realize like, man, like they do worry, but it's just they just sometimes have a hard time showing it.
well, it takes moments like that, to be fair. Like, to be fair to them, it takes moments like that, because like I remember going back for, God rest their souls, Nan and Pap. They would tell us things, and then when stuff like that happens, you're like, oh wow, that's right. I remember them telling them that. And that kind of leans into my next thing I want to talk to you about, my twin, about this stuff, is that this stuff, like I said, it affects not just us, it affects all the loved ones and all the other people that we meet in our times. And we have to understand that, because especially nowadays, which I'm not trying to justify anything, but there is a lot of people that I feel like use this as an excuse to blame other people or hurt other people. And I completely disagree with that. I think it's wrong. You shouldn't have to, do something. It's one thing if you have to defend yourself, that's one thing. But to just justify you harming other people just because you're miserable and you don't understand what's going on, to me, I think it's just wrong. And I
No,
don't.
no, you're right, because it kind of reminds me of this other story, like because like I've been seeing this nice lady here, and she has someone she cares about, well, like because he doesn't want to take, like because he did like a 3-day job thing, and he had a mental breakdown on one of the days, and he didn't even come back to work, like he was mentally out of it, like, and he didn't like, but it did affect her, but she still loved him, because it's like it doesn't mean that you're lazy, because like she actually saw like a healthy message from this afterwards. It was like, don't see yourself as being lazy, just realize that you're burned out, because that doesn't mean like you're not willing to do stuff. It's more of like, you just got to realize, like, if you're not careful, well, you might burn yourself out, you might end up doing something worse.
Well,
And
that's not what I was talking about, though, my twin. I was talking about how, like, I'm seeing a growing number of people, like, taking advantage of other people because they were taking advantage of other people, and like they hurt other people, and like they try to justify their abuse because they themselves were like taken advantage of, like, the world did them wrong. Which, yes, can it be frustrating and have people, taking advantage of us? Yes, absolutely. But not everybody's like that. And I've seen more times than I'm going to admit on this podcast here that people, like, regardless of who you are, they think that you can justify your abuse on other people because of that. And to me, I don't think that's right. And it does bother me as someone who struggles to this day with this stuff. It's like, I'm scared to like really go out and try to connect with people because of it, because the moment they realize, like, hey, something's up with you, they're kind of like, yeah, they're kind of even more hesitant to be around you. And in times like this, it's probably not the healthiest thing in the world.
no, it's like, no, and I do think that there are people that are out there that do care, and they do want. like to help out. Like it's just, I think it's just like a matter of, it's like what I said before. It's like everything when it comes to the situation is sometimes is always going to be up and down. Like sometimes it's going to be bad, sometimes it's going to be good. It just really depends on the atmosphere that you put yourself in.
Yeah, and I will, and it's funny you say that because I also am 100% in support of my mother and father. You know, I do not blame them for any of this. I
No,
think,
like all parents, like especially with their time, is like they're very like old school. They're very strict, but I love them, and I'm very thankful that that they were my mom and dad had because like they knew like they did help us out a lot. I mean, Nan and Pap helped us see that because I remember like Nan always said like because like again we were dealing with depression and not realizing it. And I remember Nan just calmly say like, well, didn't your parents do this? Didn't they do that? And then we were like, yeah, well, there's your answer. Like in going, and I was like, just makes you realize that.
well, and again, this like one of those things, you know, and I sound like a broken record, but it's like, you know, to this day, our mother, you know, still struggles with that because she still blames herself, even though you and I have both gone on record numerous times with her, you know, that we'd never blamed her and we never will blame her because it happened. You know, there's nothing any of us could have done about it. You know, and I like to think again, you know, maybe it's all part of God's plan. You know, and
Yeah,
you know, I never really, and to be fair too, we never really sat down with both of them and like heard their side of things and like, you know, and that's again like to anybody out there who's struggling with like mental health or like physical disabilities or a combination of the two, just know people are there to try and try to just be like appreciative of that. Will you have days that you're stressed out? Absolutely. And it gets absolutely frustrating. You know, me and you have a lot of frustrating days, but never forget that those people are here and they do love you and that just be appreciative that they're there even during the stressful days.
yeah, like and to be fair, like our mom has been feeling a little better because, like I said, I we went to places to there where she actually got to talk to people in person, and like yeah, she still had like some sense of suspicions, but she feels a little more relief because there are people now that they talk to her and like they tell her these things like, well, yeah, like no, because I have people that I've known that go through this as well, and like this is like something that you have to really believe, like you have to work on and all that stuff, and they give her like a sense of relief because she feels like she's actually getting answers that she wished she had gotten years ago. Oh,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like, you know, we all wanted answers, you know, and there's, trust me, there's a lot of answers that we have yet to really, you know, get. And it does, like I said, it does have those frustrating days, you know, but you know, like you got to try and stay positive, which, you know, there's definitely days where you're like, I don't want to hear anybody try to say anything like that because I'm annoyed. But, you know, you still got to try to find ways to be positive and like, okay, well, how can we be productive? And that kind of leads me into, you know, my next question and stuff I want to talk to you about, my twin, is that we have found some things that's really helped us out. Like, you know, and I'm not just talking about like video games and all that stuff, but there's been like stuff like comic books and like creative writing and a lot of things that like helped us out, you know, get through the day and help us like, you know, get out our frustrations. And I think that stuff is really important too. And I know one of the things that you like, my twin, is, you know, D&D, and you've done a few you DM'd a few games with people, which I know you really liked. So talk about that, my twin. Like, what makes you like the idea of being a DM in a Dungeons and Dragons game? Or let me rephrase that, a whole tabletop game, that is.
well, I think it's not, it's more than just like the tabletop thing concept. I think it's just the idea of world building and creativity and trying to think of stuff on the fly. Like the whole creative mindset of it is what I think is I find fascinating. Because it's like because I just find it so cool. It's like finding a way to make a world of fiction in a time of reality where you feel like it helps you deal with stuff. Like I still remember the story of my first ever D&D game that I played, it, because it was like not just with dealing with mental health. It was like we're just set in the world of the Great Depression, and I'm like this actually feels pretty good. Like I was having fun, and everyone was appreciative of it. I mean, obviously, like by comparison to a lot of the people you see on YouTube or anything, like I'm not a full on expert, but just the idea of the world building and the creativity that you can try to put in it, it's just, I just find it really fun and fascinating.
Well, and to be fair as well, like it also helps us like interact a little bit better with people, even though we're not necessarily the best social creatures out there. But one of the things that I've noticed when you started DMing things, because you actually had volunteered with and some of our friends, and you had talked about it and seeing you how I interact, and you definitely seem more comfortable with like the homebrewed style of things because you want to try to see how other people will react or do things before you make a decision. So it does, in a weird way, help us interact with other people.
Well, well, that was like one of the things because when I was nervous to ask. So they said like, "Well, have you ever thought about trying?" And I'm like, "Really? Like, I don't know." Like he said, like, and when I asked, one of the advice that he gave me, and I'll give to anybody else who wants to try and make a homebrew story, is if you have a story, if you're making a story and you have something that's concrete that you know that you want to happen in your story, and people kind of misdirect it from it, find a way to get them back there, or 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 in a creative way that they know, like, hey, this is part of the story, it needs to happen, and all that stuff. And it's like, but yeah, like you said, it's like sometimes you do need to like take stuff from, because there were ideas that I did that I got from those guys because they were just joking around and making some funny stuff, and it worked out for me.
Yeah, and shout out to the people of Moondragon. That's who Chad is referring to that gave him the advice. But and also too, like with me, like, and again, and this is one of those things where like I wish I would have known sooner, but maybe I wasn't ready to know yet. But like when I was in high school, like I really got into creative writing when I didn't even really realize I was being creative writing. Like, I would write stuff all the time and talk about things, and like, and then I look back on it, I'm like, holy moly, why didn't I notice this before? Like I would write stuff not even realizing what I was writing, half the time. And then it's led me to a lot of things like poetry and, some short stories that, I hope to publish someday, and continue to do poems and stuff, and among other things. And just the idea of like being creative and like creating like this fantasy of like just something to help ease the stresses of, the reality that I have to face every day, which that to me is the best creative. It's like, it's, not real, but it helps ease the stresses of the reality. And to me, that's the best kind of creativity, in my humble opinion.
But yeah, like I think it's like, because again, like when I did some of the D&D stuff there before, like I always never really had it as D&D. I always just said like again, like creative world building. Like you just found a way to put it in D&D format. Like I just love the idea of like, oh, I wonder if like if this happened, like in a story, like what if this happened, like all that stuff. Like you want to become that, like just like a creative wizard or something. Just try to have fun with making up stories, because you and I used to do that. I mean, to this day we still do, but I remember like in high school I used to research. I mean, I still do. I research comics, and like I would look at other stories and like wow, this actually is kind of cool. It's
Well,
cool,
it's
like
funny. It's funny you say that about comic books because comic books and really storytelling has been like a big factor of our lives. And the quote, one of the things that are, despite our limitations, our father especially had always taught us, like, well, find out what you can do, boy, and just go from there. And that's kind of like the same thing with comic books, and it's one of the reasons why we like comic books. Like, heck, look at this Avatar, the great Daredevil. Well, he deals with physical disabilities, and like, and not just Daredevil, but like comic book characters in general, especially done correctly. It shows people like, hey, you know what? You may not have everything or able to be a superhero, but there is something you can do to contribute that could help others. Like my writing could lead someone to do this, or help be a part of something to build, something for a bunch of people. Like we don't know until we try. And
yeah,
people, and that's kind of what my goal is right now with my writing right now, is that like I want to express myself in like multiple different ways, but I want to inspire people and like, try to, and I'm a firm believer of this, like, whenever our day comes, and it will come, it comes for us all. But like I want to do something that like people see and they're like, you know what? I like how he tries to look at things and like inspire to try to like, make the world better or when you leave it.
yeah, like you want to like in a peace of mind, like sense of like, hey, like even if you're not like a world renowned person, like you, at least in a sense you've done like a positive spin on for things I think that has been helpful for others. Like like there are people like at our home library where like they would always appreciate like the help. I mean, yeah, obviously I'm not the world's best at, but they've shown like appreciation to helping them out in some things, and they've been thankful for to this day. Like,
Yeah, and I think also too, and let's talk a little bit more about comic books, my twin. Like I mentioned Daredevil earlier, like here's a guy that's blind, but and he's just a simple lawyer, but he tries to find any little which way he can to help, to make people better because he believes that that's important for people. And I think it should be important for people. There's a lot of people out there, not just us, there's plenty of other people, besides us that are struggling out there, whether it be like mental health, physical health, or any combination of the two. People are out there struggling and they need hope. Like there's people out there that just want to have like a normal life and they may not even be able to have that. So there's got to be ways we can all find to help each other better ourselves, and to continue to show that we are important, that you are loved, and that you can do something whether you realize it or not that could be as important, that even more important than you realize.
well, yeah, like it's like it's not just in comic books. Like I remember, we can get back to comic books in a minute, but it was like there was a movie that came out that we watched a while back called The Accountant 2, which was the sequel to the original Accountant, starring Ben Affleck. That character had a sense of autism, like he had like a level of autism, and that was something there too. Like here he is trying to live life. Now, obviously, it's an action movie; it's a work of fiction, but you can see like how it affects him around him, and how it affects like people he loves, like his brother, or all that stuff, and the people around him. Like his brain doesn't work the way that other people's brains work, and you can see that struggle as well as like how does he adjust to it.
Well, that was actually, spoiler alert, but that was actually one of my favorite parts of that movie when we watched it, because I was like, holy crap, like I could totally relate that. Like, like the relationship between me and you, and even like our parents and our older brother, like, because of our issues, like we sometimes, doesn't always go the way we hoped. And we sometimes like struggle to like really talk to each other about stuff, mainly because of that reason.
Yeah,
Because whether you're embarrassed or just frustrated, you just don't know how to express yourself. And there's plenty of times, believe us, there's plenty of times when we said something and we were thinking like one way, but then somebody's like, well, how about this and that? I'm like, that's not how it looked in my head. They completely misunderstood where I was going with that. And it does get frustrating sometimes.
yeah, so yeah. Believe me, I've been in those spots as well. It's like, oh, it's like again, it's like it's just a misconception of things, and you have to like you have to know when to like calm down and like need to understand like they're trying to help you, but like what they're thinking is not always what you're thinking.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I liked about Daredevil. Now obviously I'm not blind, but I could relate to him in a lot of ways. But he also like talks about other things that I think, you know, I wish more and more people would talk about. But also there's things like Spider-Man, Captain America, the Punisher. There's a lot of these great characters out there that, especially like if you look back at some of the older comics, they actually did discuss some of those things, but I feel like in my humble opinion, they did a better job of like understanding it, where people nowadays may not necessarily, they try to help or sometimes even avoid it. Like Daredevil, like he makes no bones that he's blind, but he still thinks that there's got to be something I can do to try to help people.
Yeah, like yeah, no, it's the same thing with like lots of characters, like even like nowadays, like in recent years with like comic books that are continuations of things. Like in recent years they've had like Power Rangers there's in comic book form, or even like the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer show. Like even then they talk about like certain topics that try to help people out in that, as opposed to like what you see nowadays where it's like it's just this one thing.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned Power Rangers, which honestly that was our childhood right there.
Oh yeah.
People, yeah, like people don't realize like how important, especially like with us, especially now that we're older. Like the older we get, the more I appreciate that show and like what it's done for me in my life. But it shows like, hey, again, you can be different, that you're different, but there's also like you got to realize like, hey, we're all struggling and we all just got to stick together, despite our differences, to try to make a world a better place. And that's exactly what Power Rangers is to me. And I think that's the best kind. And like, God bless, the original cast. They really, I hope and pray nothing but continued success in their lives because they've been such an influence on me. You know, Oh, it's just stuff like that. Just it gives me hope, and like and I'm sure like other kids who go through similar stuff that we are going through is, I feel like they feel the same way. Not that I'm a spokesman for anybody.
No, I think it gives like people a sense of hope and also like, or I guess relief. I guess is another word to use. Is like it just lets them know like, hey, they're not alone, and we don't have to be like in panic mode all the time.
Yeah, and like and also too like one of the things like people are probably like wondering like okay what do we do to try to like keep ourselves busy, and one of those things talking about self-reflection, and we do this a lot too, and in fact before this podcast we even did it, but we like to go for walks, especially when it's warmer out. Like when we go out walk and we're like just sitting there talking stuff, and then we just get in thought and we're like, oh wow, like this actually makes sense now that once we're like calm and focused and you
Well,
know
it's kind of like what I said like with one of my coworkers is that like it's not being lazy, but sometimes like there are days where like especially if you're dealing with mental health problems like anxiety, sometimes like even if you don't feel like you want to do something, it's like it's best to like not have anything to do because one of the things I think people need to understand about mental health is like when we go for walks, it allows us to like just let our minds process things because then we're not worrying about anything, we're just walking and
well
lets our minds calm and focused up on things. Like, because sometimes there are days where it's like, if we have a mental breakdown, it could take days for us to calm down. Then, like, but when we go for like things like walks, it's like, or like we don't feel like we're having anything to do, our brain slowly starts to catch up, and it's like, oh wow, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. Maybe I just needed to like relax for a minute.
Well, yeah, and also too, and it should note, like we also walk for physical reasons. Like with us, having cerebral palsy and scoliosis, we can't really do like the traditional like workout stuffs. Like some of the things we can and cannot do, and of course, we all found this out the hard way. But but the whole point is like we try to do stuff to try to keep ourselves like physically like trying to, our bodies not stiffen up and try to like keep everything loose. But also too, like you mentioned about the mental health thing is too, like our situation is, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is that when we struggle with our stuff mentally, it's like it's not just like one thing. There's like a bunch of billion, like there's like 100 things going in our brain at once, and they're going like 100 mile an hour, and we can't get it to stop. I mean, that's how it is for me, and I can't speak for everybody, but it's for me, it's like holy crap, can something just slow down? Can I just think of just this one thing right now? I'll think about this other stuff later. But
Yeah,
people
no,
don't see that.
yeah, no, I'm like that too, and like that's why I say like they're like if especially if you have like those kind of mental problems, it's like sometimes like and some of the people I've seen, like therapists I've seen, are like say like too is like the days where you don't need anything to do because your brain needs to slow down because that's the way for your brain. Because if you're out doing something, thing it may help. Like if you're writing on something, you can focus on that. But there are days where it's like you need to slow down because your brain is burnt out and you need to like let it catch up and cool off before you do anything. Because sometimes you might make a situation worse when you're not really trying to.
Yeah, no, and also another thing too, I think it should be important to mention because a lot of people can deal with this as well. With me being a creative writer, there's sometimes I'm like I write something and I'm like, God, should I even be that way? Like, where did this come from? Like there's a lot of things that I've written that I'm like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Like, am I like, God, are you trying to tell me something here, or is there something I should be worried about? Like, like sometimes that gets you in a panic because you sometimes like, when I finally published my first poems book, which was, honestly one of my happier moments of my life, I I still got in a bit of a panic because I'm like, man, I wonder what people are going to think of me when they see some of the things I've written, stuff like that. And it's just like, and then sometimes I'm like, should I put in that poem in? Should I just been made it more like this instead of that? There's things you constantly question, but ultimately you just got to sit down, like relax, and then like think to yourself,
you know what? Whatever happens, happens. You know, the people that, you know, actually get you will understand, and people that may not understand you, you know, they're not necessarily bad people. You know, God bless them. You know, maybe they just don't understand you, and you know, everyone thinks a little differently about things. You know, and that's okay. Well, yeah, like, well, because I'm the same way. Like when I try to come up with creative stuff, like most of the time when I do like my blog, uh, it's like, you know, here I'll just like, again, I'm not like the best writer, but I try to like talk about stuff that I know and like try to give. I guess my main thought is like try to give people like options, a sense of variety, because I think, especially nowadays when people are dealing with mental health, well, I mean, regular people deal with it too, but it's like you're constantly going after like the same thing over and over again every day, and it's like, can we do something different just to like take a break from that? Because I feel like that's another thing too. Like I think people with mental health needs to do is like even if it's something that they've known their whole lives, is like just take a break, check out something different, and not like make everything a debate and argument, because I feel like that makes it worse too.
Yeah, well, no, it's funny you mentioned like debate stuff. Like I try to avoid those videos because pointless. Like, well, for me, I think it's pointless because even if I agree with somebody and think, oh yeah, they definitely are, you know, like say, like I definitely agree with them, or they, you know, quote unquote, the winner of the argument, if you will. But it's like, okay, now what? You know, and I think that's for me, like someone dealing with mental health. It's like, okay, like we're talking about this, but it's like, now what? You know, you can argue all you want, but it's like it's ultimately not going to lead to anywhere. And I think that's kind of the a problem with a lot of mental health stuff too nowadays, is that people just, you know, whether you're right, you're still wrong, because people are just like, okay, now what? You guys just want to argue for the sake of arguing now at this point,
Yeah.
and you know, people just to me, that's a huge concern of mine. Like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, this, you know, well, if you know, if this happened, maybe we wouldn't have had that. And I said, well, yeah, but you could say that about like a million other things. Like, you know, another big thing too, I think a lot of people need to understand about mental health, or like people stressing out on things, is it's not just one thing. You know, people think, well, if we just fix this one thing, everything will be better. And I'm like, you can't complete 100-piece puzzle by putting down one piece.
Yeah, like, and I think it's also too like, I think another problem with like debates or like people like with generals, like when you're dealing with mental health, is there are times where it's like someone could be on a topic and they could be like constantly bringing it up over and over again, and the person that is dealing with mental health may not want to have to put up with it all the time, and that can make a situation worse. It's not that they agree or disagree with the person, it's just like mentally, like, we need to breathe here, like, do we have to like bring this up all the time? Can we just like talk about something else?
Well, yeah, no, that's definitely true, and we're guilty of that, and we've been through that stuff as well, you know. But I think, also too, and I think that's something that I think also needs to be addressed, is like, yeah, like we may have to try to switch things up every once in a while too. But the problem is like a lot of the, say, like the issues are still going to be there, you know. So, but I
Yeah.
think with that being said, it's like, okay, well, if we could just take a little break and then we could just get right back on it, we'll have like maybe a fresh perspective, or you know, everybody won't be as, you know, angry or as anxious about things anymore, you know, because you know, you can only do so much in a day. And I
Oh
think
yeah,
it's,
very, very much so. Yeah.
well, I think it's important though too to like people to realize that. And I think, and this is where I think people with you know, mental health and you know stuff, you know, and this includes us. You know, we've had our moments where we do this. We're like, well, people, you know, they got lives too. You know, I mean, yes, and it does suck. You know, sometimes you're like, wow, I wish I had somebody there, you know, to talk to. You know, like there's somebody there, but at the same time though, you know, they can't. I don't know how to say it, but they can't live around you. You know what I mean? Like
No,
they,
or you can't live around them. It's like you can't like just focus on that so much, because that could be a problem, especially if they have a ton of responsibilities of their own they have to deal with.
yeah, like I think that's important to like recognize as well. And it's like, yeah, you can you have those frustrations? Yeah, absolutely. And do you wish you can have someone there all the time? Absolutely. You know, I'm guilty of that. There's days where I'm just like, man, can I just have somebody there, or just talk to, or like, you know, you hate being lonely, but you know it's there, but it's, you know,
Yeah.
you just got to try to find ways to like help you get through it on your own, you know. And some days are easier than others, and it's not always easy, you know,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. It's like I said before, like sometimes like you need days where you don't have anything to do, just so you alone can let your brain just process stuff. Like that's the one thing I've always I've learned real quick. And if anybody else watching this is dealing with mental health, that's something I think you really need to do. Like if you just go for a walk or something, like just do something there to like let your mind process things, give you a chance to calm down before you go and go on hard, like on hard topics or work on stuff, because you could make a situation worse when you're not when you're not really wanting to.
Well, and I think it also should be important to like acknowledge, some of your frustrations. Like you're going to get frustrated, like, but if you don't acknowledge it, it's just going to be building up inside, and it's going to explode, and it's going to explode at a really bad time. And I think that's important too. Like people need to realize, like you said about like, taking a break and thinking about it. Like, to anybody out there, it's like, yeah, you're going to get frustrated, and it can be frustrating. But if you don't acknowledge that you're frustrated or you don't have something to like take care of it, you're gonna become the bad guy. You're gonna become the problem, which, you got to be careful with that, because somebody that didn't deserve it. And this is why I said I don't agree with people trying to, take their anger out on other people for no reason, because, a lot of people, are out there that do care about you, and you got to be careful with that stuff because you don't want to hurt somebody that did absolutely nothing to you.
Yeah, and some of them are just very happy to have you in your lives, and you don't want to like blow up in their face and stuff like that. Because I know, speaking from experience, like you and I have been through that stuff as well. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, even to this day, I'm still, I've had moments where like I'm talking to somebody, and I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you guys now. Like us talking about this on the podcast, I am nervous about what other people are going to think when they hear us talk with this,
yeah,
that's
like
just being perfectly honest. Like, it's just, it's just how it is, like, do I think I'm being ridiculous to myself? Absolutely. But,
yeah, like there's lots of times you worry about that, and I also think so too. Is like is everyone gonna be okay then afterwards? Because you don't want them to be mad at you, because obviously they may not know your situation.
well,
And
and
they,
also, well, you're also worried about like being misunderstood because, like I said before, like you could say something and you're like, well, this sounded a lot different in my head compared to like the reaction of the reality of it.
yeah,
But like trying to be on a more positive note, my twin, like, we talk about like stuff that we like. I mean, we'll talk more like this on another day, but I mentioned Daredevil being my favorite character, but your favorite character is Spider-Man.
oh yes, like Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man's definitely one of my favorites. I mean, obviously I have so many ones because I don't because one, I'm just a big nerd of the genre in general. Well, like one time an example would be the Shadow. Oh,
That's a good comic book.
yeah, no, I love it. I love the concept of it too. Like it's like obviously like there's comic book issues where they're in modern times, but mostly he's been known back in like the 20s and 30s era, with gangsters and stuff like that. Like it's such a cool character.
I like the whole point of like creating like his own like secret society kind of thing.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me more of the like his agents. They kind of remind me of the Cobra Ring. Like because like he has an agent who is a store clerk, who runs a deli. You know what I mean? Like not everybody is like a secret soldier agent. Like it's like I'm like, wow, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think that's cool stuff too. And I think, like I said, like I love comic books, and they've definitely helped out in a lot of ways because I think it is important to tell stories like like even if you're not like the main character, but it still shows like, hey, you can still be a valuable piece to the thing. Like, yeah, obviously, like for example, again, like I love Daredevil, and Daredevil can do like he's a ninja thing. He's a ninja, and he's a lawyer, and he can do all these great, incredible things. But
Yeah,
there's a character that he's best friends with named Foggy Nelson, who is really just a lawyer, but he's a lot more important than I think people give him credit. Like he helps Matt, keep balance, and I think that's really important to people, and I think that's still important to this day. And I wish more and more stories can be like that too. Like they may not look like the most important character, but they're more important than I think people, don't than they realize.
well, I guess we could probably talk about this more on this topic on another episode. But it's like it's kind of like the connections to things. Like if you go back to like say with shows like Doug. Like it's like you kind of go in that direction, like something that people every day deal with. Now, obviously, there are parts that are like over the top because again, it's fiction, it's a cartoon, but there are factors in it that people can talk about even to this day.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm surprised there's not. I mean, at least, and this is just in my mind. I could be wrong, but like, I don't really see many shows like Doug or anything like that that discuss like, hey, like we all go through problems. How do we, figure it out? To not only become better people, but become better friends and like do things together. I don't really see that stuff anymore. It just seems like everyone like, again, this is just my humble opinion, but like everyone wants to do their own thing, and nobody's really, like
Yeah,
I just say it's just like nobody really does anything for the greater of the group, and besides just themselves.
well, yeah, well, we could talk about like something like that on another time because it's like we're on top of mental health. Which, by the way, like I think another important thing we should mention is like if things get like really serious, there are crisis hotlines that you can talk to, like you can find. Like go if like I can't think of one right off the top of my head right now, but if there's some mental issues or something that's going on, please call please look up like a crisis hotline and please talk and please call those people and like talk to them. Like try to like get yourself out there, like because they don't want because again there are people there that care about you. They don't want something like that to happen.
And not only that too, I also, not to shove religion or anything too, like you can, like, not only can you call those people, but also there's like priests out there like you can talk to. You can go and pray to God. There's multiple ways, to let out your feelings, and more importantly, like healthier ways, because and as someone who has a history of self-harming, it's not worth it. It really isn't, and I'm still guilty of it, because it's like I struggle with it, but there's people out there who, who want to help, and there are places to go. Now, I can understand that you're scared. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to be scared because
there's nothing wrong with being scared.
Yeah, and like people, but again, those people are there to help you, and the clearer you can make your mind, the easier a lot of things will be. Like honestly, like when I finally like opened up about, realizing like, what, maybe I am self-harming, you know, and when I wrote about it on my blog, I got such a reaction to it, which honestly shocked me. I wasn't expecting that, but it just, proves my point that, there are people out there that do care, even if it's someone that you don't, get to hang out with all the time. Like they're still there, and there are people out there, whether it be like, like the hotlines, these like therapists, the preachers, like, there are people that legitimately care about you and they want to help you, and that you don't have to be in there alone. And trust me, like self-harm and suicide is not the answer. It really is not.
No, it's not. It's like because most people, especially with mental health, say they would self-harm themselves, but it's like themselves. But sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes they might actually harm others, even when that's never their intention.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Like I think people just need to, realize like, hey, it's better to, and that's part of my problem. There's a lot of times when I was really stressed out, I was frustrated, but I didn't want to cause any issues with people, so I would just take it out on myself, and which again, do not do. It's not worth it. And
yeah, it's not healthy for anybody.
No, it is not. And I tell people this all the time. It's just there are people that love it, and trust me, it is hard because I'm still guilty. Even to this day, I'm guilty of it. Sometimes it is hard to see, but there are people out there that do love you. And they want you to succeed and find something that you love, and be successful in, and just have like a happy, normal life. You don't have to be rich, but you can still be like, let me rephrase that. You don't have to be rich, financially. You can be rich and like be able to just like live a happy, normal life, and that's all you really need.
Yeah, because like again, like we should probably do an episode on this because like besides like Power Rangers and like Spider-Man stuff, like Digimon. Like I remember it was season 2 of Digimon Adventures, where I think they were fighting Black War Greymon, where Vmon, Warmon, and Agumon talk about how like your life doesn't have to be like major events to be something special. like just hanging out with your friends and all that stuff, and like just like little things like that can sometimes be more impactful than just like, hey, I'm going to like this big time like fancy award show or something.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that can be a great thing if it happens. We're not saying, don't think big, but
Yeah.
but what we're saying is like, oh well, there's so much out there that I think people need to realize. And again, it can be tough. I'm not gonna lie, because like, from where we live and like a lot of people, there's a lot of places out there that may not have much to do, and I think that has affected some people in a lot of ways as well, that I think we all should acknowledge.
Yeah, but I was just saying at the same time though, sometimes it's like we're basically saying though is like you don't have to have like a bunch of stuff happen to you all at once every day. Like sometimes like simply have a nice, simple, quiet day with nothing to do is sometimes like the best day in the world, as opposed to like going to like a big time like fancy like concert or something.
Yeah, and also too, like the little things too, like
Yeah.
like for me, for example, like like just using myself as an example, is like on my blog post, I'm pushing like I'm getting closer and closer to 15,000 views, and I'm like, wow, like that many people from around the world's looking at my blog, or even as like this podcast, like like little things. I'm like, wow, it's certain things. I'm like, holy moly, like this is really happening. I never thought it was possible, or I never thought it was possible that I published my book, but yet here I did. As little as it may seem, it could just be like a piece to something bigger. Sometimes you just got to remind yourself that you're like, may not be where I'm at, but I'm like, well, at least I got up to here, and that's something that can just keep you going, not just in like a career, but just your life in general.
But yeah, like it's also like with friends too, telling you is like you have done well, even if you don't see it. Like you've done a lot better than you give yourself credit for.
Yeah, and with that being, and also cherish the people that like for example, like my twin brother here. Like I've been through a lot of things, but I know I'm not alone, and I appreciate you, my twin.
Thank you, my twin. I appreciate you as well. And again, we appreciate like our parents, because again, like as all parents do, they drive your kids crazy. But I love them, and I'm very thankful that they are my mom and dad.
Amen to that. I'm the same way. I'm thankful. Also to anybody that watches this, I appreciate you, and also to every friend or person that I've met in my life. Even if it's just for that one day, I'm thankful for that. And I hope and pray everyone finds their happiness in life. And with that being said, I just want to say thank you, my twin, for coming on.
Absolutely. Hope to do this some more. This is fun.
Indeed. Even though I do feel like we're a little bit rambly today, but that's just typical us, huh?
Yeah.
But again, I love you, my twin. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you again for having me, my twin. Love you too, man.
And with that note, I just want to say thank you all for watching, and just know that there's always hope and that you are loved, and I love you all. God bless. Be safe out there, everybody.
Bye.